Hi everyone, welcome back. So in this video I'm going to show you my process of how I planned out this animation, and I want to preface this by saying that this isn't the way that I normally do this stage of animation planning. So normally I would actually work in one of my books and draw out the storyboards in pencil with little notes, but with this one, because the background was already painted, I thought that I could go straight in and Procreate and do a mix of storyboarding with my rough animation thumbnailing stage. So I just turned on Procreate's animation assist and basically started doing a very rough straight ahead animation. I want to say that this was a bit of an experiment, but in reality it was actually me trying to cut corners and speed up the storyboarding process, because it's the part that I really enjoyed the least about animation. So in hindsight, working in my usual way in my book in pencil would have been far more productive and helpful to the process, because this way actually left me feeling quite bored with the animation before I'd even started. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the animation itself was boring, but because I'd gone over it so many times already, it felt like I was repeating a stage when I came to do the first pass of the rough animation, and having to do that repetition, it didn't feel like it was helpful. Like, there was always that temptation to just think, oh, I'll just use the animatic thumbnails as my rough animation stage, and then that would have meant that the quality was a lot lower than I would have wanted it to be, because again, I would be cutting corners and that wouldn't be good. So this essentially became an animatic more so than a storyboard, which basically so an animatic, I guess, is an animated storyboard, or it's a pre-animation, I think. I don't actually know how it's defined. Like, I know what it is, but trying to explain that is not my forte. But basically an animatic is an animated storyboard. So that's what I was kind of doing in this stage. But yeah, it still didn't help me with the struggles I run into with storyboarding. I don't know why I find storyboarding so difficult, but I get like this feeling of anxiety almost when I'm storyboarding, where I'm trying to get all my thoughts about the action of the animation down on paper for the first time. And because the animation is still new and fresh in my mind, it means that I'm racing to get all of that information down. And that that leads to a build-up of like anxious energy. And yeah, I have to keep stepping away from it and like taking breaks just to kind of cool off and then go back and do a little bit more. So yeah, this stage was also different this time because the background was already painted before I started storyboarding, whereas normally I would be designing the background by doing the storyboards. So the storyboards would provide the information and the requirements that the background would need to fulfill. So like how it would be laid out so that the character can move and everything. So when I'm storyboarding, I take into account staging an awful lot, and that information about staging then informs like background choices. Whereas with this one, I did the background first, and I was animating the character being in that background and in that shot, which, you know, it does disregard the staging, I suppose, in a certain way. So for me, the challenge with storyboarding for this one was how to stage the action around the background that I had. And I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it's it's different. So yeah, it was the other way around this time, and I had the background first, so everything was all a little bit jumbled up. But one thing that has improved in the time since I did these animatics to the point I'm at now when I'm actually processing this video and recording this voiceover, is that I've been able to slow my mind down a little bit and approach it more calmly. And I think one of the biggest things that's contributed to that is the fact that I'm back animating on paper. So I find what happens a lot when I'm working digitally, and I don't know if it's the same for everyone else, but it's something that I've learned about myself, is that when I'm working digitally, because I can use the transform tool or the liquify tool, or I can press play and I can instantly see the results and change them, it means that I rush into the process without thinking it through, because there's little consequence to not getting it right the first time. And you can see it in the video here, where at this point I was checking the timing and it came out at 9.5 seconds, and I thought, oh yeah, that'll be fine, that won't be a problem. When in reality, if I went into it knowing that I was animating on paper, those seconds would be a lot more precious, because I know that I have to draw everything out on paper. And so yeah, returning to paper animation has made me be a lot more calm and conscious of what I'm planning, rather than just adding frame after frame after frame after frame, because it's very easy to do that digitally. And like I say, you get that instant playback loop of seeing the animation, and it's like, yeah, this is great, this is going really fast, I can do this. Whereas on paper I would have looked at it and gone, that's a lot of paper, you know. That's a lot of animation. Am I gonna have to put in a new order for a new paper ream for this one? So yeah. But what I'm doing at the moment in this video, where I'm using this wonderful cut template that I made, which absolutely knackered my hand, actually cutting out all those little boxes with a scalpel, it was not easy. But this is my storyboarding template, and normally this is what I would do, is I would draw it out in my book, and then I would write down all of the notes and draw the little keyframes. And where I start doing it here, by this point I had already done all of that work that you'd just seen, where I'd already drawn it out. So I was already frustrated with the fact that I was going back over work I had already done. I was redrawing it out, and in my mind I had the thought of, I've already done this, why am I drawing it out again? I'm just wasting time and valuable resources and stuff. So I did give up, because I think I drew in 6 or 7 like storyboards, and at that point, like, it should have been a warning that this animation was going to take too long, it was going to be too much, because even at like the 7th storyboard I was like, okay, this is taking me too long. So the warning signs were there, I just didn't pay attention to it. And again, that's because of the fact that I was working digitally, and because I animate quite quickly when I'm working digitally, as long as I'm focusing, of course, it feels like, yeah, 30 seconds, that's nothing, I can animate that, no problem. And that ends up not being the case. You know, animation takes time, and I should know that by now. So it, you know, entirely my fault, but it was just so fun to add in all these little extra things, like tiny brown mouse missing the jump, and then little mouse has to lean and, you know, pick him up, and, you know, it's all these wonderful ideas for character animation, but it wasn't necessarily the point of the animation. And that's kind of meant that this whole process has been a massive learning curve for me. And although it's been frustrating at times, it really has led to something wonderful, so I am happy about that. So it's led me to being back animating on paper, and that is something that I really love. There is just a different feeling of life to my work when I animate on paper, and I've been seeing that already in the little pencil tests that I've been doing. And it's going really, really well, so fingers crossed I haven't just jinxed myself, and that it has actually led me to the place that I meant to be in. I'll still take you through the full process of all of the digital animation that I had done before switching over to paper, because I think being able to show all of the ups and downs of a process is part of the journey, and it's, you know, it's important to show. And often the only part that's shown is the final stage, and it's all sunshine and rainbows, so I want to show all of the failures and the backtracks as well as the bits and pieces that work. So yeah, so the next step after this was designing my little characters for this animation, and that'll be in the next video that I upload. So if that's something that sounds fun to you, then, you know, please subscribe, and I hope this video has been enjoyable. If it has, then please click like, and feel free to come find me on Instagram and Threads, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. So, bye!